So Namibia is optimistic it can start producing its own oil by 2026. Petroleum giant Shell recently made a fossil fuel discovery off the coast of the country. Further tests still need to be conducted to see the size of the potential oil well. The major shareholders in the project are Shell and Qatar Petroleum, with the National Petroleum Corporation of Namibia owning 10%. Let's unpack this discovery. We're joined by Professor Raymond Durrheim from the Wits School of Geosciences. Thank you so much for coming through this afternoon. Should we be excited about this or cautiously optimistic if South Africa is anything to go by and what we have seen over the past few months?
Well, I think something like this can be both a blessing and a curse. And it really depends on how this discovery, well, whether it turns out to be a viable commercial discovery. The initial signs are very promising, but there's still got a lot of work to be done to determine the viability of the discovery, and then, of course, the way in which the government and the companies manage this, how they decide to go ahead with development. So it's quite early to say. It could have tremendous benefits for the country, but it could also cause harm.
Let's explore the good news first, which is the blessings. What potential goodness could come out of this?
Well, firstly, like, all developed countries, we like to have, we use energy to travel in our motor cars, to light our homes, to cook with. And so that has to come from somewhere. And of course it can come from fossil fuels, or it can come from renewable resources, it can come from charcoal even, it can come from nuclear power. So we have to decide what is the mix that we're going to have in our country in order to get the optimum benefit and the least harm. So certainly currently, as I understand it, Namibia imports virtually all of its energy, much of it from South Africa. And of course, as we know, even in South Africa, our energy supply is constrained and sometimes unreliable. And so that is an issue. They would like to have, I imagine, better control over their energy, have energy security as it happens. Also, so that would be the potential to generate some of their own energy from gas that's been produced and oil that's been produced within their own borders of their country. And then, of course, there's all the opportunities, and there could be opportunities for employment, and of course that depends on the deal that's done between the government and the oil companies that are given the licenses to develop the oil fields, exactly how they structure that. Often, let's say, it's true that in countries like Namibia and even South Africa, there are not that many highly skilled professionals in these fields like petroleum geoscience, but there are many, many other opportunities for helicopter pilots, for caterers, for people, welders, providing all sorts of other services to the oil production platforms. And then, of course, there's the royalties and taxes that can come from this. And again, we need to determine whether this is a viable oil field, but that could literally run into billions of dollars over the lifetime of a field. So, and again, what benefit flows to the country? Well, that depends on both the deal that's struck between the government and the oil companies, and also how the government actually deploys the income that they earn, whether it's spent, you could say, just on prestige projects that benefit a few, or whether it's truly invested in the country, in educational systems, in developing other industries that can provide employment as well, or perhaps even into a sovereign wealth fund, which is what countries like Norway have done. They take the money and invest it in worldwide, so they will continue to get dividends from this, which is an ongoing benefit for their land.
So all this goodness hinges on how well managed this process will be. When we take a look at what you call the curse, you think of countries like Nigeria that have had oil spills. You think of a country like South Africa where, there's a huge issue of contention around the environmental disadvantages of this. What's the worst that we could see?
Well, I think these discoveries have been made in deep water far offshore, hundreds of kilometers offshore. So while in Nigeria, a lot of the problems have come from the oil that has been discovered on land in the Niger Delta. So in this sense, it's far offshore, but of course that could affect the fishing industry, and fishing is an important industry in Namibia. There could also, in the worst case, of there being a major spill. And spills have happened. We remember more than 10 years ago in the Gulf of Mexico, there was the Deepwater Horizon disaster. There also have been a few instances of oil tankers like the Exxon Valdez running aground off Alaska, and that could have a big impact on marine life. So there is always a risk that there could be an accident of some kind, or it could interfere with fisheries and marine life. So that again is something that depends on how well it is managed. I mean, oil is produced in deep water offshore and has all over the globe and has been done for decades. So there is technology and experience in managing these things. But again, these are large-scale engineering projects in deep water where the seas can be rough. And so there are always risks involved with that. But there are risks in not doing something like this as well.
Absolutely.
So this is what one has to decide as a government and as a people. How do we manage this opportunity and the risk?
I'd like for us to take a look at what Minister Blade Nzimande termed as a country of angels who will starve when he was talking about all the litigation around Shell and other companies. When we look at a country like, or a continent like ours, you speak of the fact that we even import our oil, yet you've got countries that have so much oil. Why is that? Nigeria comes to mind, I guess, I think.
Yes, part of I suppose this is just almost like a blessing of nature, where these oil deposits, in fact, are found. It has got to do with the geological history. But also and of course, the technology and the money that's needed to explore. The technology is very advanced. The amount of money is huge to explore and to drill these wells. And so it's something that countries generally don't do themselves. There are these big multinational oil companies that do this. And they're always looking for perhaps the best place to invest. They're looking not only for good geological potential, of course that's important, but they're looking for a stable government, and also, of course, the lifetime of an oil field is 20, 30, even 40 years. And there's huge upfront investment, so they won't be pretty sure that they can get a return on the investment. And of course, things like the oil and gas price is very volatile. It's doubled in the last couple of weeks because of the conflict in Ukraine. And so, again, it's difficult to make a long-term prediction. And so they are looking for investors that are comparing, say, investment in a company like Shell and Total with investment in Apple computers or investment in Elon Musk's Tesla motor cars. And so there's great competition around the world for, I suppose, for capital. And so the companies have to be able to put a very good case here. And they're not just exploring in Africa. Currently there's exploration all over the world, in Malaysia, in Indonesia, off the coast of South America, countries like Guyana and Suriname. There have recently been discoveries made. And so I suppose the investors and the oil companies will be seeing which is the most secure and attractive place for us to invest. And that's probably why many places in Africa have we've not seen so much development because of, you could say, the risk to investment.
That's quite interesting. Maybe that's a conversation for another day, because I'd love to unpack that. But taking a look at what is happening between Russia and Ukraine, you've got a number of countries that are pulling out. BP, for instance, also pulling out of Russia. What kind of opportunities are there for the continent here, if at all?
Well, that certainly could be a real opportunity, because much of Europe gets its gas, is piped from Russia. And so, if you've got a restriction on supply from one country, of course, it will open up opportunities elsewhere. Of course, it takes a while to develop a gas field like this. It's not something you can just switch on overnight. It will be years, maybe from when the investment decision is made. It can easily be 5 years or more before you get that first cubic meter of gas out. And we can see what's happened in Mozambique, for example. There was big investment in northern Mozambique, and there has been an insurgency in the north, which has meant that has stopped for the while. And so, so we hope, on the one hand, if there's that one part of the world which can't supply, it creates opportunities for other parts of the world which are more stable, and they will in turn attract investment. And so it's part of this whole global geopolitical game right now.
It definitely is. Thank you very much for helping us make sense of all of that. Wits School of Geosciences, Professor Raymond Durrheim. Thank you very much.
Thank you, dude.